Today we're diving into a really fascinating study that looks at a radical new approach for one of the toughest symptoms of Parkinson's disease. The big question is, what if you could kind of reboot the body's walking instructions right from the spinal cord? So first, let's talk about the problem. For so many people with Parkinson's, just walking across a room becomes this monumental struggle. And it's often because of this terrifying thing called freezing of gait. Okay, I want you to imagine this. Your brain is yelling, go. You want to walk, but your feet feel like they've been suddenly superglued to the floor. That's freezing of gait. And it's not just frustrating. It dramatically increases the risk of falling and, it can completely steal a person's independence. So what do you do when the usual treatments just aren't cutting it? Well, a group of scientists working on a study called STEP-PD decided to try something pretty unconventional: spinal cord stimulation. Now, spinal cord stimulation, or SCS for short, usually involves implanting a small device that sends these little electrical pulses to the spinal cord. For years, it's been used to block pain signals. But these researchers thought, hang on, what if those same electrical pulses could do something else? What if they could break through that paralyzing freeze and help get people moving again? And this paper right here details their really ambitious experiment. See, to make sure their results were rock solid, they set up what's called a double-blind, randomized trial, and that is the absolute gold standard in medical research. It's how you prove if a treatment really works. Okay, so to find out if this stimulation was actually the thing making a difference, the researchers had to be incredibly careful. They couldn't let anyone's expectations, not the patient's, not even their own, mess with the results. So they took 12 participants and split them into two groups. One group got a specific type of stimulation called microburst. The other group, they got a sham, basically a placebo stimulation. And here is the most important part. For the first 6 months, nobody knew who was getting what. Not the patients, not the people running the study. This whole double-blind thing is so crucial because it strips away the placebo effect. It all boils down to one simple question: would the group getting the real zaps actually do better? So after 6 months, it was the moment of truth. Time to unblind the data. The researchers zeroed in on their main goal, which was a score that measures how stable you are and how you walk. Everybody was holding their breath, waiting to see the difference. And the result was a total surprise. At the 6-month mark, there was no statistically significant improvement in the group getting the real stimulation compared to the placebo group. I mean, on the surface, it really looked like the whole experiment was a bust. But, and this is a huge but, if you stop there, you miss the most important discovery. This is where great science often happens, right? When the first answer isn't what you expect. So the researchers started digging deeper. And here's what they found. While their main measurement for walking didn't get better, something else did. A totally different measurement, one that tracks leg stiffness and slowness, a symptom called bradykinesia, it was actually showing a really promising improvement in the group getting the real stimulation. This was the first little clue that something important was bubbling under the surface. So that little clue made them think, maybe we need to look at the bigger picture. What happens if we give this more time? It turns out that sometimes the real effect of a treatment doesn't just pop up overnight. Science is definitely more of a marathon than a sprint. So after those first 6 months were over, the trial went into what's called an open extension. And for the next 6 months, everybody, including the people who were originally getting the placebo, received the real active stimulation. And the results from this longer-term look? They were pretty remarkable. By the end of the full year, that score for leg stiffness and slowness had improved by a whopping 4.31 points on average. The effect was real. It just needed more time to show up. Now, this gets even more powerful when you add a little context. The researchers compared their results to data from a completely separate database of Parkinson's patients. And that group, well, they showed the typical progression of the disease. Their symptoms got worse over the year. But the group getting the spinal cord stimulation, they completely bucked that trend. They didn't just stop getting worse, they actually started to get better. So this just raises a massive question, right? Why? I mean, what was this stimulation actually doing inside the body to cause this delayed but pretty significant improvement? To figure that out, we have to look past the legs, past the spine, and go all the way up to the brain. See, the whole time, the researchers had been using these advanced PET imaging scans to see how the brain's metabolism was changing.
They wanted to know if the signals they were sending to the spine were somehow remodeling the brain's own wiring.
And the scans? They showed exactly what they were hoping to find. After that long-term stimulation, there were real significant changes in key parts of the brain that control movement. The big one was a measurable drop in activity in a deep brain structure called the thalamus. This right here was the biological smoking gun. The thalamus is like a central relay station for all your motor control signals. So by sending these pulses up the spinal cord, the treatment was basically calming down this overactive hub. This is huge. It suggests the therapy wasn't just working on the spine, it was reaching all the way up and rewiring the very brain signals that cause that awful leg stiffness and slowness. So what's the big takeaway here? Well, the study didn't find a magic bullet for freezing of gait, at least not in the short term. But what it did do was prove the therapy was safe, and even more importantly, it uncovered this potential new way to treat other really debilitating motor symptoms over the long haul by directly changing what the brain is doing. You know, this study is just a perfect example of how science really works. What looks like a failure to meet one goal can actually lead to a much deeper, more profound discovery. It opens up brand new questions, and really, it paves the way for the breakthroughs of tomorrow.